feels so good.
Oh my God, it feels so good.
Feels so good.
Oh my God, it feels so good. Feels so good when you treat me like no other, no other. Feels so good when you call me your lover, your lover. Feels so good, one lucky brother, lucky brother. It feels so good, oh yeah, it feels so good.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Nganawe Live YouTube channel. Please don't ask me what I'm laughing at myself. I haven't done one of these in a very long while. I think it's been like 6 months, which is like half a year since I've done a review. I hope you guys are good. I hope you guys have been keeping well. As you can guess by the title of the video and the thumbnail of the video, this is another video about Silverton Siege. If you haven't watched the first 3 interviews, please go check them out. Now, Silverton Siege is a film directed by Mandla Dube's second film, which is also his second historical film. His first directorial debut, rather as far as feature films are concerned, was Galush, which came out in 2017, which also starred Thabo Rametsi as the lead actor, playing Solomon Mahlangu. Keep an eye out for that review coming very shortly. For now, let's talk about Silverton Siege. This film is inspired by true events. It's a historical film based on the Silverton Siege, which actually took place in Pretoria. 3 freedom fighters, known as the Silverton Trio, who were on a mission, and then the mission got sabotaged some way, somehow, because they had an informant within the crew who sold them out. And then they ended up having to seek refuge within a bank in Silverton, hence Silverton Siege. And they are actually the 3 people who pioneered the Free Mandela movement. This happened in 1980, which would then 10 years later would get Mandela being freed from prison. But had it not been for these brave 3 young freedom fighters, who knows how things would have went. The names of the main trio have been changed within the film. We'll talk about that later on in the review, because a lot of creative liberties were taken within this film. I had the fortune of watching this film before it got released some time ago. So I've sat with this film for like quite a while. And then I also had the fortune of being invited by Netflix to come and interview the cast and crew members of Silverton Siege, specifically, mostly just the cast and the director, Mandla Dube. It was a pleasant experience, as you guys have seen from the past 3 interviews. I got to cook up some questions for them, and I tried to ask as many as I could, but I couldn't get all of these questions. And so most of this review is going to be me either asking, posing, or trying to figure out these questions that I still had, either for some of the actors or the director for himself specifically. Having spent time with them, they were amazing, they were lovely, they were very kind people, and they really indulged me and many others. It wasn't just me, but it was Netflix invited a lot of publications. I was one of those. I say this to say, within this review, we're going to be exploring these questions that some I didn't manage to ask, because we're only given 10 minutes, only 10 minutes. Some of them already have a little bit of context to them, so I might also be answering some of these questions, and this will help you, hopefully, sitting at home when you watch the film and you do have some question marks, or you have some limitations, or wondering, I wonder. Hopefully you'll get some of the answers within this review. So this film stars Thabo Rametsi, who we've seen in a previous Mandla Dube film, Galushi. It stars Nokolo Dlamini, who we've seen in another Netflix original with Ujaiva last year. And it also stars Stefan Erasmus, who we've seen in Fila Second. And it also stars the legendary, iconic Arnold Vosloo, who, got to say this to his face, one of our greatest South African exports when it comes to talent. Because he is. Him, Charlize, Trevor Noah. I'm proud. I'm South African, man. I cannot be proud. It's finally great to have him back in the country. This is his second film, if I'm not mistaken, since he's been back. He said he's going to do a film every year, so I'm very excited about that. It also stars Michelle Musalakai and Ilani Decker and Dumi Shomasha. This film looks amazing. The cinematography, and I know I'm always finicky about cinematography versus being shot well, because for me those are not two things. This film, cinematography of it, the language of the film, the visual language that is helping translate what was written onto screen and eventually into your eyes, it's really great. It's one of the best that we've ever seen. It leans very much into the action genre and the thriller genre this film does, and you can feel that in the way in which the shots are set up, in the editing. Oh my goodness, the editing of this film is also another thing which is really amazing. you really do feel like, yo, I'm watching a high budget, high production value action film, as much as it's a historical film, which we'll get into that shortly. You also are very much entertained throughout the whole film, which is another thing that I really, really did like about this film. Of the Netflix original films that I've watched, SA Netflix original films, I feel compelled to say this is the best one I've seen yet. Yeah, I really can't. If you feel like there's another one that I'm skipping, specifically Netflix originals, not ones that have been acquired by Netflix. Netflix original, I can't think of a film that is better than this one so far. Oh, I love the attention to detail. Another thing that I really enjoyed here was like these small little nuggets, and I don't know whether they're intentional or it's just, byproducts of, when everybody's just tuned in and doing their work. But first of all, the makeup on this movie was amazing. When they're in the heat and in the sun and they're sweating, you're like, oh my God, you really feel what you're assuming that they're feeling in the scene or in the moment. It's very visually engaging, and you're very much taken and transported into that world, and you really do feel like you're in 1980 South Africa. It's not a spoiler, but there's other scene where something happens, and when we go to the next scene, there's like blood on this guy's feet, and it's like, for me, these are like small pieces of details that I like, which don't necessarily take away or add anything to the film, but for me, these are like small Easter eggs where I'm like, wow, this just shows me with the people who are working on this are so dedicated that they're willing to go to that level of detail. Another thing that I really did enjoy was the acting. Tabora Metsi, Nokolo Dlala. Actually, I will say this might be very controversial. I didn't quite enjoy Nokolo. Rather, I didn't quite enjoy Jiva, and I couldn't really tell. That's one of the reasons why it took me so long to actually shoot the review. I don't know if I'm ever going to shoot the review, but I was really, really impressed by Nokolo in this film. She plays the role of Terra. Oh my goodness, amazing. And even Tabora Metsi, like you can tell that these guys are really, 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 in their zone. And when I spoke to the director and even Tabora Metsi himself, they were talking a lot about how they got to spend time with the script. And Mandla Dube, the director, and shout out to him for this. This is very commendable. He fought for, he said 8 weeks rehearsal. You go watch the interview. I might be quoting him wrong. Just go watch the interview if I'm wrong. But he mentioned that he fought for a lot of time. It has to be in the contract. It's stipulated that he wants so much time to rehearse with his actors. And you know what? You can see it. You can actually see it in the film. It's okay. These people are now living these roles. These people are now these characters that they're portraying. Once again, if you put in the work, man, it'll always show. It'll always show. It was very seamless. Stephanie Erasmus was also great. It was really amazing. One thing I love about Stephanie Erasmus is the fact that I asked this question also in the interview. He plays a lot of racially ambiguous characters. Maybe not in South Africa because he identifies as colored, but he's also got a lot of roles where he's played an Arab, where he plays this or that. So even in this movie, it plays a lot with that, the racial dynamics. This is another thing that I loved and took away from the film, was the fact that this film, as I mentioned, it is based or inspired by true events. The director did take creative liberties, which is nothing new. One thing I did take away from the film was the fact that as much as this is a historical film, but a moment that actually happened is very important. And what the director brought in, and maybe even the writer Sabelo Mkiti, what they brought into this film by themselves was, it is a film that really just explores what it is to be a South African from different eyes, from different lenses. It's a film that unpacks the racial dynamics of what it would be to be like in such a situation at such a time. It's not just about, I did say leans into the action elements of it, into the genre of action and thriller. It leans very much into that. When that needs to happen, shit pops off. It really does. Even the ending scene is like a very, blaze of glory, and closing scene of the film. It's very fantastic. It's very larger than life. I really, really enjoyed it to see that from a South African production, which is not quite common. However, what I'm trying to say here is the fact that this touch, the unique touch that the writer and director came with, was this film is actually just exploring what it is like to be South African and identity, racial identity at that. Because you have all these characters, and these are some of the creative liberties that the director and maybe the writer even took, where the Silverton Siege trio, for example, there was no woman and there was no colored person amongst them. It was all 3 black men. However, the creative liberties that were taken, and I mean, I find them justifiable, was the fact that Umandla Dube took it upon himself to make sure, okay, these characters are going to be diverse characters, and we're going to use that not just for the sake of making them different or diverse. It's actually funny because I actually saw a tweet when the first trailer or teaser ever came out about this movie, and I didn't know about the Silverton Siege, by the way, until this movie came out. I don't even want to lie to you. I didn't know about the Silverton Siege, the historical moment. I didn't even know about the film. I didn't even know that the film was coming out. But a tweet that I saw back then, when the first teaser came out on Twitter, was someone asking, why did the director add a woman as one of the characters of Silverton Trio? When you watch the film, and even I, having spoken to the director himself, and when you finally, figure out what the film is actually about, a film that is unpacking identity and dynamics, you understand that most of these choices and decisions are very motivated. It's really just about all these individual characters, because we have moments with each and every one of them, even within the supporting characters, the supporting cast. Every character has their moment to shine. It's not just about this, these 3 freedom fighters fighting for or fighting for liberation. It's really just personal stories. These are personal stories, and really, obviously, because we're in a racially charged country, but also a racially charged time, is trying to unpack that identity, race, color, even, because there is a black character who also is passing as white in the film, because they're living with, I don't know whether it's albinism or albinism. And that character is played by Michelle Mosalagai. And all these things, you can tell really the story, as much as this film is about the historical events of 1980, the Silverton Siege, this film is really just about being a South African is a very, very complex thing. We have a character that is played by Arnold Vosloo, General Langerman, who at the beginning of the movie starts out the day wanting to lock up these freedom fighters who are classified as terrorists, as a matter of fact, who are fighting for their own liberation. And he's just doing his job. But as the film progresses and he starts seeing a lot of things, most of which you'll see as you watch the film, you get to see this character change and become conflicted, because he's realizing, yo man, I get it. I get what these people are. These are people, first of all. These are people who are fighting for what is right for them. There's even that line in the trailer where it's like, what is the price for freedom? Where Thabo Ramesa's character asks, what is the price for freedom? Asking General Langerman, played by Arnold Vosloo. And he answers, I don't know. Because you can, even in the film, it's more contextualized in the film. You're like, this character, how do you answer a question like that? You're like, yo, bro, I understand what you're going through. I understand what you feel. And I really want to help you in this situation. I don't want to see you dying, bro. And you've put yourself in the situation where you're probably either going to die or go to jail. And, I'm just doing my job. But at the same time, I understand why you're doing what you're doing. It is just unfortunate that I find myself in a situation where one could say my hands are tied, So it's even that where we get, if you watch one of the interviews, we speak about that. There are black characters who were for apartheid. There were white characters who were against apartheid. And there were a lot of people who were conflicted. The character played by Ilani Decker of Christine is also another character that is used. This is a fictional character, didn't exist within the Silverton Siege back in the day. This is one of the creative liberties taken by the director to create this character where it tries to once again explore what it would be like for a character in this situation who can see the injustices of the system that they live and thrive under. No, this is not good, this is unfair. And the character is a very important character in the film. Once again, won't divulge any further because I don't want to spoil the film. But these are the things that I took away and I really, really enjoyed about Silverton Siege. Man, it's more than just about, it's a apartheid, because it was getting a lot of slander on Twitter. It's just an apartheid film. And I get people's gripe with that, and what I can say to those people is watch more films, because we really don't get that many apartheid films. I know if you don't watch a lot of South African films, you get this perception that we're only getting South African films from the struggle or from historical films. Barely. We get a lot of films in South Africa. We make a lot of films in South Africa, and a huge chunk of them are not apartheid films. However, I can understand why someone may think like that, and I don't blame you. The point that I'm trying to get to, though, is when you watch this film, you get to find out it's not just a historical film about a time during apartheid. It's not just that, and it's also not just a high, high octane action, which it is. It is both these things, but what it really is, the personal touch that the director and I will say the writer also brought to this film is it is a film just unpacking what it is like to be a South African. And like Stephanie Rasmus said in the interview, what does freedom mean for you? What is freedom to you, These are really the things that I really, really enjoyed and loved about a Silverton Siege. And this was my takeaway from the film. And like I said, I was not anticipating or expecting this film. First time I ever heard about it was literally when the first teaser dropped. And I was like, okay, wow. And then I saw Mandla Dube and I was like, man, you guys don't know this, but one of the reasons why this channel even exists is because we went to watch Kalushi back then. We're already, in plans of creating this channel. But when we watched Kalushi, I was like, man, we really, 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 really need to make this channel, even though I never got to speak about it. Review still coming though. Anyways, moving on to certain questions that I had for Mandla Dube during the press junket that I didn't get to ask, because we got to speak about a lot of other things. But I had some questions that I really wanted to ask Mandla Dube. Some I've even started touching on them within this review a little bit. But one of those questions was, so something that you guys might or might not know, Mandla Dube has taken it upon himself, this is something he has stated himself in many interviews, that he is creating what nowadays the kids know as a shared universe. So he's creating a series of historical films that, document certain events that have happened in the past. But he has also mentioned very much, even to my face, Uguti, as much as he's making these films, he also doesn't want to make documentaries. He's not making a documentary about the film. So he still wants to keep he wants to inject entertainment into the stories that are being retold. But what Mandla Dube is actually titling this whole historical series, he's titling it as Legends of Freedom. And from that series, we've already gotten Ikalushi starring Tabora Metsi. We're now getting Silverton Siege, which is also starring Tabora Metsi. I wonder if the third one, which is the current working title, is Rivonia Trial, I wonder if it's starring Tabora Metsi. We'll see. It'll be very interesting to see that. So he's telling these stories where he's documenting all these historical events, while also injecting some entertainment and taking some creative liberties when and where necessary. And one of the questions that I had for him on the day was, how does he reconcile the creative liberties that he takes with preserving the integrity of the actual historical events? Because, for example, like I've mentioned in Silverton Siege, the Silverton trio don't go by their actual names, the genders have been changed, the races have been changed, etc., etc. I had these questions for him. I couldn't get to ask him because I didn't have enough time. However, in a very roundabout way, I did end up getting my answer. One of them being that as much as he's documenting these historical events, he's also not necessarily making documentaries which need to be factual. He believes very much in also making entertaining films at the same time. But as I was mentioning earlier on about the point about racial dynamics, you can tell that he also has his own stories that he wants to tell using these historical events as a vehicle, unpacking certain characters, unpacking certain, experiences, asking questions, because there are a lot of questions that are being asked in Silverton Siege that don't have answers and maybe would never even ever get answers. But it's for you at home to ponder and think about it, maybe see another person's perspective. It's not as clear cut as this. So at first I was conflicted a little bit, because I was like, creative liberties are being taken, and I feel like they might be affecting the integrity of the historical events. But having spent time, like I said, with the film, having spent time with him and asked him some questions, this is how I answer this question back to myself. At the end of the day, nothing can ever be 100% true, but not only that, he also has his own stories that he's trying to tell, and also has his own experiments that he's trying to do as a creative and as a filmmaker. And also I always say this, make a good movie, make a bad movie, don't make a boring movie. Another thing he's trying not to do is not to make a boring movie. And me, I can take that, bro. I'll take that. So at the end of the day, we are getting the information of what happened enough for you to be interested enough to do your own research or find out, oh, wow, wait, this is inspired by true events. Okay, what actually happened? Who are the actual people who are involved in this? And at literally the first screen, when the film ends, he shows the actual Silverton Trio, all three of them there with their pictures and their names. And like as I'm saying, if you're interested enough to find out, you then go back, okay, what actually happened, who were these people, and in the film, as much as creative liberties were taken, who were they replaced by, etc., etc. So that is my answer to that question that I had. And Mandla Dube, if you could please indulge me once again, as you have. You've been very amazing. You can comment down below, or we could even have you on the channel. We can speak about this, you know, forever and ever and ever. Another thing about Silverton Siege is, if you watch enough films, if you consume enough art, one thing you'll know about art is that creating is recreating. And art is heavily based on inspiration, and we draw from past experiences. And one thing, if you watch enough films, or an adequate amount of films, you will see when you watch Silverton Siege that stood out for me was it reminded me a lot of Dog Day Afternoon, simply just because of the premise. You can pick that up even in the trailer. But when you watch the film, you're like, okay, so Dog Day Afternoon is a film starring Al Pacino, directed by Sidney Lumet, or Lumet, whichever way you pronounce it, written by Frank Pearson. If you've seen Dog Day Afternoon, you're like, okay, I feel like there are a lot of influences from Dog Day Afternoon here. This is what I'm feeling sitting on my couch watching the movie. And then I do my research and I find out, oh, Mandla Dube spent a lot of time in LA, and his lecturer at some point was the writer of Dog Day Afternoon, Frank Pearson. This specific person was Mandla Dube's lecturer. So this is another question that I actually had for Mandla Dube to ask in the interview. We'll see, how did he go about taking inspiration or drawing inspiration from his lecturer, his mentors, and these films that he likes, but also while staying true to the story of the historical event, because this is an event that actually happened, you know. And then closing off my review, guys, I know it's been a very long review. Excuse me. Closing off this very, very lengthy review is the only negative thing I guess I could say, you know, about the film, or that I kind of did pick up on, is there's this film technique, the storytelling device called Chekhovs Gun. Chekhovs Gun, to put it very simply, is if you introduce something in the first act of a movie as sort of a seemingly insignificant thing, you must bring that thing back in the second or third act of the film with much more relevance and possibly even recontextualization of the whole plot or the story, possibly. Yeah. So you see something, you pay no attention at it at the beginning, but then the filmmaker brings it back at the end and you're like, whoa. And sometimes these things can be very clear. You can see it happening. And as a result, subconsciously or consciously, you're already being primed. And then later on, when it comes back, you're like, whoa, I noticed that, but I didn't pay that much attention to it. So I'll make an example here in this film. There's something that happens at the beginning of this film, in the first few minutes, first act of this film, with the main character of Calvin, played by Tabora Mintz. There's a specific detail, you won't miss it, I won't say what it is, but there's a specific detail that we're given about this character. And a few scenes later, once again, we're reminded about this specific detail, about this specific character. And something specific happens. You will not miss it, trust me, but it never comes back. And for me, that was kind of like, okay, you guys really leaned into it at first, you know, because you can tell that we're being shown this very important piece of information. How it's going to play into the wider scheme of things or the bigger picture, you don't know. That's why you're watching the film. You'll find out at the end. And you may start making your own theories in your head, but it literally never, ever comes back in the movie. And it's not a big thing, it doesn't necessarily take away from the film, but it was what one would call a plot hole that I did notice because I was looking forward to see what was going to happen. And it never happened because, like I'm saying, it is a piece of information that we are being shown, like, hey, focus on this. And then it comes back again like, hey, focus on this, and then never again. So you'll see, like I said, guys, you'll see it when you watch the movie. It doesn't take away that much from the movie necessarily, like I've said, but it is something that you do pay attention to, and you ask yourself, oh, what was up with that, you know, and you never get the answer. That's the only thing I could really say, and maybe a few other things here and there that I can't think of at the moment, but like most issues that I did have with the film were really just plot related issues, like minor small things where it's like, okay, why this, why not that, why this, why not that, but a lot of them, like I'm saying, don't necessarily take away from the film, but those are the only things that I noticed that I was like, okay, you know, if I'm being fair in my review. All in all, I enjoyed the movie Silverton Siege. It's coming on the 27th of April. You're probably going to see this video a day before. Crossing fingers. I hope you enjoy it. I really think most people will enjoy it. Congratulations to the cast, the crew. Congratulations to Netflix. Tabora Mates, Stephanie Rasmus, Ilani Decker, Tumisho Masha, Michelle Musalagai, and Arnold Foslo. It's been a pleasure speaking to you guys. I hope we can get to speak in the future even more about this and other things that you guys are working on, because I know you guys are working on a lot of stuff. And Mandla Dube and everybody in the team, thank you for giving me your guys' time, and thank you for this film. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you for this film. An important film that sheds light on a historical event that is rarely ever spoken about that much. With that being said, don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share. If you liked this video, please like it. If you do not care for this video, just ignore, just close your laptop, or just minimize your YouTube and just ignore. Don't dislike this video. Don't, please. But please comment, like, and share. Ask any questions that you have below. Go watch the movie if you haven't watched it already. Please guys, let's engage, let's talk down here. Ask, hopefully Mandla Dube and the cast and crew get to see this video, and you can pop your questions down here in the comment section and ask those questions, and hopefully they also get back to you guys and their answer. With that being said, it's been great guys. Haven't seen you in so long. I hope you get to see more of me here. I don't know how this year is gonna go. We'll see though. Be good, man. See you on the next video.
Let up, let off,